From the nation's capital, this is the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast with your host, Rob Snowhite.
This is the 11th year and 259th episode of the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast. This episode features Eduardo Garcia. Eduardo suffered a traumatic injury on October 9th, 2011, which resulted in him losing his left hand. He is also a cancer survivor. A trained chef and outdoorsman, Eduardo had to relearn skills and techniques with regards to cooking and angling with his newly changed life. Eduardo also owns a culinary product line named MontanaMex that you can find at your local Whole Foods. I'd never heard of Eduardo or his story until I tuned into the Today Show last December after I returned from my Steelhead trip. I had to interview him. I had so many questions about his injury and life afterwards. When I'd spoken to my friend Ed Felker about interviewing Eduardo, he suggested that I watch his movie on Amazon Prime called Charged. Eduardo's name is familiar to a lot of people I've spoken to before and after recording this episode. In fact, Josh Mills met Eduardo a few years ago. If this is your first time hearing Eduardo's story, I hope you enjoy our conversation. You can watch his documentary on Amazon Prime, and I'll have links to this and other programs on iTunes and my blog. If you have Amazon Prime, you can also purchase Eduardo's products. This episode is brought to you by Eduardo's company, MontanaMex. I'm a big fan of the red mild chili blend. You can add heat, smoky pepper flavor, and salt to anything you eat, and it doesn't change the consistency as if you were adding hot sauce. His mild pepper red shake has become a staple in pretty much everything I eat, and be sure to shake it while you dance. After you listen to this episode, you shouldn't have any excuses for not going fishing or getting outside and hanging out with friends and family. Well, one more note before we start the interview. Be sure to use promo code FLYFISH15, that's the number 15, at MontanaMex.com to save 15% off your purchases through April 15th, 2020. I hope you all enjoy my interview with Chef Eduardo. All right, so we've got Eduardo Garcia on from Montana. Eduardo, thanks for joining the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you're in Montana right now. If we're throwing a dart at Montana, where would we find you?
You'd find me in the very southwest kind of quadrant, if you will, sort of what's called the Yellowstone region in Bozeman, Montana.
And normally I'd ask my listeners what celebrity they most resemble, but you have a documentary on Amazon that everyone should watch called Charged, and they could see you there. I think you look like half Jake Gyllenhaal and a little bit of Adrian Greer.
All right. 50-50. I've gotten Adrian Grenier before for sure.
Grenier, yeah.
I always told his producer for Entourage, Doug Allen, I always told Doug, if you ever need a chef stunt double for Vinny, I'm in. And I never got the call, but I offered.
Let's talk about, you're a big outdoorsman, hunter, angler, extraordinaire, cycling, climbing. But you had an accident a couple years back when you were hunting. Do you want to tell the story and sort of what happened afterwards to take us to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's a lot to take in. And so to be honest, I'll just preface it. And Rob, you kind of already did, but there is a documentary called Charged, available anywhere. You can download films for the most part, that chronicles the better part of the story. But effectively, I've been a chef in cooking since I was 15 years old. And I worked in the yachting industry as a private chef for about a decade. And I realized that I was burning out on food. I was like falling out of love with food, which was this powerful thing for me. And so I decided to leave the yachting industry, and with business partners, my family and my girlfriend at the time, we decided to start a Mexican food brand called MontanaMex. And we decided to also, Jenny and I decided to work or pitch a TV show about my interest in cooking in the outdoors. So in 2011, I come home after a decade of traveling the world's yacht chef, and I'm psyched to be at home. I'm fishing every day. I mean, let's see, my last yacht gig day was in Palm Beach, Florida in like April. So I was for sure home for the Mother's Day caddis hatch, which I hadn't been home for in a decade, really. So psyched to be home, and had a really productive summer at home, kind of launching this food brand, organic condiments, salsas, guacamoles, selling it at farmers markets. And we were furthering this TV show concept called Active Ingredient as well. And it was the end of the fall. It was archery season, and I was out elk hunting. But effectively, what happened was I'm elk hunting. I come across a metal can in 4 miles from my truck in the backcountry. And in this metal can, there's a tuft of black fur, a couple small bones, and I see some small claws. And as an outdoorsman, I don't even think more than a second before I pull a knife out off my hip. I put it in my left hand, and I think I take my backpack off. I set my bow down, and I'm just thinking, I'm going to remove a claw and keep it for kind of a curiosities case at home. I was a Boy Scout, and I love kind of the younger generation being able to show them sort of the natural little curiosities as you find them. I kneel down and put this knife down in this can to try and take a claw, and boom, I basically hear an incredible noise in my head and blackout. I black out. And the next thing I recall is I'm looking up at the sky, and somehow I go from that transition point to finding myself walking down this mountain, and I end up getting help at a ranch house. And I'm medevac to Salt Lake City to the Burn Trauma Center at the University of Utah. And effectively, the doctor on call said, and I quote, that I was a bag of bones with a heartbeat when I was rolled in. And I mean, go watch Charge for the details, and please do, because it's so much more than just this, sort of near-death experience. What happened is over the course of the next, 8 years of my life has been this massive recovery of just learning how to be an amputee. I lost my left hand in that injury. I was diagnosed in my ICU stay to have testicular cancer, so I dealt with that. And it's just been a tremendous 9 years of kind of a rebirthing, if you will.
What was the voltage that electrocuted you? And is there something that would be equivalent to?
2,400 volts. So, I mean, it was a main line headed to power a backcountry cabin, which, that's a lot of power.
And did the bear just end up in there out of curiosity too?
Who knows? I guess we won't know that. I don't know that.
Wow. And you have a twin brother.
I do have a twin brother. Yep.
Did he feel anything where he was? Any pain, any distress?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think he did, but there was a time in our lives where he actually had a near-death injury, and I remember feeling that. I was in Wyoming at a Boy Scout camp, and he was at home and got T-boned by a car going 60 miles an hour while crossing, like a country crossing, where we lived. So that's interesting.
And have you realized that the world might not be built for two-handed people? I've seen the documentary about Andre the Giant and how nothing was built. He lived in a world that wasn't made for his size.
Yeah.
But is living with one hand, are there a lot of things that do require two hands that we just take for granted?
Well, that's interesting because I'm trying to think about it. There's very few things that I've found in the last 9 years that I cannot do. So what it boils down to is just relearning how you do what you do, and reimagining what your new normal looks like. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. How dexterous is your prosthetic? And is there like a make and model or is it complete custom to you?
Well, no, this prosthetic is completely custom to me. Mm-hmm.
And with the dexterity, fly fishing and being a chef, how small of a thing could you pick up, or how delicate of something?
Let me see. Let me make sure I get your question.
So is it like the
how fine can I get with the tip of my hook?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like when you're fly fishing, it looks like you're grabbing the fly line while the rod is in your right hand.
Right.
So you could say a 5-weight line. You can grasp that.
Yeah, with my hook. Absolutely.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, I mean it's great. I mean it's not knots aren't as easy, but I've figured it out. The hardest part is like stripping, right? It took me. I think it was. I mean, to say I gave up is poor form of me, but there was when I got back to fly fishing within a year and a half of my injury. I just had to I had to figure out how to make it simple again. It was almost like tenkara fishing, if you will. I would just figure out how to get the line out and then leave it out, and just bigger mends and trying less stripping. But it really kind of relegated me to nymphing and staying on top. And so it was we were floating the Jefferson 4 years ago now, maybe, and it was just your classic, like, I think it was like an early fall day, maybe late summer, or and it just looked like a streamer day. It was starting to cool down, and I asked the guide. I said, "Hey, do you got a wet rig I can use?" He says, "Sure." So he hands me a streamer rod, and within maybe a couple casts, and probably shitty casts, right? I hook up with a brown. And for the rest of the day, I just work that streamer, and I catch browns all day long and have a blast, just like whipping it underneath branches, getting it to the bank, and just working it and figuring it out again. So, yeah, so it's been a progression,
Are browns your thing?
No, being outside's my thing. Fishing is hopefully what you're eating. It's dinner primarily, and also it's sometimes I do say if I'm catch and release fishing, or I'm not taking a fish home with me, that it's like practice for catch and keep. A day out on the boat.
Now, this may be a gruesome question, but after such a traumatic burn injury,
Mm-hmm.
does cooking over coals remind you and bring back? Because smells are a very important memory trigger. Is that kind of a gross question? Ask that when you're cooking, does it remind you at all of your injury?
Oh, I think it goes the other way around. No, when I had my injury, it was the other way around. I was like being able to witness the interior parts of my muscles and bones and and physical structure that I'd never had access to visibly or physically, like even to just feel emotionally. I remember seeing my amputation for the first time with my naked eyes, no bandages on it. I was like, wow, look at that, look at the marrow. I mean, it looks like a shank bone, and because for me, butchering and working with animal and anatomy in the food space, I think I've always just been comfortable around it, more curious than put off, I guess.
True. And what was the first thing you wanted to eat when you got out of the hospital? You had to have had some cravings, been stuck in there that long.
I have no idea. I know when I left the hospital, I was just addicted to blue Gatorade and pumpkin pie. Yeah, I think it was more or less what I wanted to eat, but more what did I wanted to do, which was like just rebuild, get
being
outside.
a foraging hunter, eating that hospital food must have also been not what your body's used to. You wanted some real food after that?
I mean, no, I think I started to eat pretty well. As soon as my appetite came back, as soon as my appetite came back in the hospital, I just, I had a family there. We had a full team. So we actually got to know the Thai restaurant in town, Lotus Pad, that we liked so much. His name was Leon. The owner was Leon, and he personally was delivering it to our room at one point, or out in the foyer, and we ended up becoming great clients of his for years on follow-up trips to Salt Lake. So no, we celebrated food, and that's kind of what we do as a family. So as soon as my actual appetite came back after about 3 or 4 weeks, it just hit me. It was like, bam, I'm hungry. And family and folks, we brought it in.
How much of what you do eat comes locally? And then I have a gardening question too. Any secrets for growing peppers?
first off, we take so much great joy, like total stoke and psych when we have the ability to be, it's almost like to strategically get something to grow in the garden. Or when Becca, my wife Becca, she has 4 beehives, so when she spins honey off the frames before the winter, and so then we'll be in our home, and it's a hell of a good time to try and come up with a meal or a drink or a dish that is 100% harvested and brought into our home with our hands, or with our, with a trade through a friend that grew it. And I don't know, and so, but it's a simple pleasure, right? It's just because we love food. It makes us feel good. It makes us happy. So I'd say that more than maybe half of what we eat, at least in the winter, and maybe even up to 70% of what we eat comes from what we hunt or grow.
That's fantastic. We're big gardeners here. We just got our first tomato sprouts from our seeds this week.
Yeah.
And
nice.
those aren't going in until after Mother's Day. So they should be nice and big.
Yeah, nice. Good for you.
Yeah, I've got a plumeria right in front of me. And then I've got a passion fruit. The passion fruit one doesn't want fruit at all, though.
I've heard about those. I wanted to grow a passion fruit. Huh. We don't. So you asked about peppers. Most of our garden, we have what we call a food forest here, and it's 70% of it's perennials. So, but we're just kind of starting to dabble in annuals, and we haven't had great success with peppers, to be honest. So we're still working on that one. So I can't give you much there.
So I was about to say that with regard to peppers, now that I'm using the red Mex Montana powder, I'm not using Australian chicken salt anymore as my sort of condiment of choice on our kitchen counter.
Nice. The mild red chili MontanaMex seasoning. That's 4 different dry red chilies. Sea salt. I love that you're using that.
I can't use the green one because there's cilantro in it, and I don't know how strong the cilantro is, and I'm that person.
Oh, you know what? I would say that cilantro is like 2% of the recipe blend. I would know. And it's mostly, it's going to be the spice of jalapeno along with the vegetableness of jalapeno. Does that make sense? Like the peppery, ness of the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get that. And then we have 2 different garlic blends in there. So you're going to get the garlic, and then there's a little bit of Mexican oregano, cilantro, sea salt.
Okay.
So the cilantro is minimum.
Honestly, the only time I was kind of like, ugh, watching the documentary was when you were chopping the cilantro. There's this giant mound. People on the podcast know for years I've got an aversion.
That's funny.
Yeah. All right. So you're in Southwest Montana. What are your home waters that you're most often going to fish? And then what are you going to do a day trip or make an excursion to fish with all that just amazing water? You don't need to name anything specific if you don't want a hot spot.
More often than not, I like to fish what's local to Bozeman. It's within, I would call local within 70 miles of here, 80 miles, right? And if I'm going to, and I do that because I just feel there's so much water here, as you just mentioned. I agree. And gosh, you could spend a lifetime trying to chase every tributary, every tailwater, every little puddle. I have a friend who, selected a mountain range, and he's just like, every summer I'm just going to try and knock a new lake off the list. And so that's his jam, But if I was going to travel to go fish, I've been enjoying saltwater fishing, and it's that stripping thing, right? It's been nice to kind of figure out how to double haul with a prosthetic, right? And, and that's been fun. So if I'm going to travel, which is, not often, but, maybe once a year, if I'm really, really lucky in the last 5 years, I'd try to go saltwater fishing probably.
And you are a nympher. So are you like a match the hatch guy? You doing the new European stuff since you're mostly nymphing?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm mostly nymphing. I'd say now I just fish whatever they're biting on. Whatever's going to work is what I'm fishing these days. I like it. Nymphing's productive. I love eating whitefish. Rocky Mountain whitefish are delicious when they're you gut them, you scale them, and then just like you would treat a snapper, like a small snapper, you can score it, and then I salt the cavity and the score marks and fry it whole. And then I take tomatoes and avocado with that green MontanaMex one, the spicy green MontanaMex one, and make a quick salsa. And gosh, they eat so well. So nymphing can be productive and a lot of fun.
Do you have any favorite hatches out there? You said the Mother's Day caddis hatch.
Yeah, I think that's always just phenomenal to see a river in a, the noise it makes. It's like a cacophony of eating fish at times, right? It's just the whole river's alive with mouths and tails. And that's insane. It's been I think I probably only had it once, incredible, when I was, I don't know, in my early 20s, and I was wet waiting. So I think I probably just jumped out of work, jumped out of my car and tucked my jeans into my socks to keep bugs from crawling up my jeans, and tried to nestle inside my t-shirt, and it was thick and amazing. But then of course you could have a yellow Sally hatch, and those are such delicate little dry flies. It's so fun, especially to sometimes fish big water with a tiny fly and just see how far and where you can get to with it. And but watching a yellow Sally just disintegrate into a bare hook, and then nothing takes it anymore. And so you finally put a new one on, like those kinds of hatches, I think, those are burned in my memory forever.
And when you were, from your youth until when you returned from traveling the world as a chef, did Montana change a lot? Any of those hatches different, more housing? Did you seem different when you returned?
10 years ago, I would say in 2011, it was growing for sure. It's really in the last 10 years, or in the last 9, that I've been home, and maybe, that I really feel this part of the world has really started to grow. And little holes, or kind of dodgy back road, boat ramps, or fenced up, but for the most part, and here's the other thing, is it's tough to say, and I want to make sure to not try and leave a development's been crazy, because you don't have to look far to know that Bozeman, Montana's flying right now in terms of its development. I'd also say that what I'm seeing is the climate of the water itself, the health of the ecosystem of the fisheries and the habitat is probably the most alarming thing, just which then creates real socioeconomic disruption. And so that's what I notice is maybe the health of the water has changed because of a variety of reasons, whether it's climate and usage and population, and so that's what I probably noticed more of, that when I was a kid, I I was ignorant to, or maybe it was just not happening as much.
Has the weather changed much? I know you all are getting some cold right now.
Well, yeah, last year was a solid Montana winter year, 5 months of just snow. This year so far, it's been pretty mild. Having said that, there's a winter storm advisory happening right now, and predicting, I think, 12 inches plus in the next 24 hours. So it feels like winter now outside.
We don't get much winter anymore out here in the mid-Atlantic. Just, it's gone. Maybe it's skipping a couple of years. I don't know.
I think it does that. I think there's cycles to everything, but I think it's I don't know. I think it's also pretty obvious. There's a lot of obvious indicators, of what to expect.
When I was a kid, the robins used to migrate. Now they're all over the place in winter. It's comfortable for them now. It's not too cold.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So also with the travel around the world, you got to see some pretty amazing stuff. Have you wanted to return to any of those to go fishing?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I've wanted to, and have started to slowly explore parts of the Caribbean that I just thought looked beautiful. And then, yeah, I would love to make it down to some other continents. I'd like to go fish in South Africa, and I'd like to go fish in Japan, and just kind of do some more experiential cultural trips as well, that, with fishing being a part of it.
Mix in some of the culinary hotspots as well.
100%. Come on.
Yeah.
No, you couldn't see. That's the thing, and it's funny that did you watch the Hungry Life series that we produced with Yeti?
I did not.
So So Jenny Jane, who is my ex-girlfriend and business partner in the MontanaMex concept as well, and I talked about that we went earlier in this podcast. I mentioned that we were also going to develop an outdoor cooking show. And so we ended up finally, it's kind of bittersweet, but we had a meeting with the Food Network to sell that show. And that meeting was 5 days after October 9th. So we were in ICU and didn't make that meeting. So in 2016, Yeti Coolers partnered with us, with Jenny and I, to create a short cooking series called A Hungry Life. And if you go check it out, you can YouTube it or find it on Yeti. 2 of those episodes are fly fishing episodes. And the premise of The Hungry Life was that these enjoyable parts of my life, fishing being one of them, food being another one, should go hand in hand. And so at some point, we developed a show about going out on your adventure, but incorporating food into your day out. So you may not actually be fishing for the whole time you're on the water, because you may pull off early to start a fire and throw some potatoes in the coals and get a grill set up, or get a hot stone set up, and get a trout and lay it right on the coals and cook it and warm some tortillas up and make a quick taco and have that be an extension of your experience out fishing, right? And so for me, when you ask about the culinary element, in fishing adventures, it's such a part of traveling and life experience that I'm super passionate about, to the point of wanting to share it through film and storytelling.
If you can get to England, there are just pheasants just sitting on the riverbanks.
Really?
Just in the middle of nowhere.
When are we going?
All over. I'm ready to go back. I was just chatting with my guide Andy from the Cotswolds the other day.
Right. Well, I'm going to say this to my wife, Becca Skinner. If you're listening, let's talk to Orvis and let's get a trip going over there. My wife is a primary photographer for Orvis.
I've been following her for years.
Oh, you have?
Right. And so honestly, I didn't put together who you were until you were on the Today Show around Christmas.
Uh-huh.
And then I saw the photos. It said photos provided by Becca Skinner. And I'm like, wait a second. And then I looked, I'm like, wait, I know who you are now. But I didn't know about the injury. I never really I saw pictures of you, but I've worked with Project Healing Waters and amputees, and maybe to me, seeing somebody a little different. I'm not going to really just go out of my way to see what that injury was.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's, well, 2 things. I mean, I love that you had the connectivity with Becca Skinner's work. So, and check it out, folks, at Becca Skinner is her portfolio on Instagram. And she's amazing. And I want to share this. This is fun, actually, to have the opportunity to say this on this podcast. But that's how I met my wife. This is great. I love this. I love how these things are unplanned. But I was, 10 p.m. rolling through Instagram, trying to settle down at home. And I see a photo in my feed, and it's a green grassy riverbank, or what I think is a riverbank, a bottle of bourbon, and a fly fishing rod. Just this beautiful photo, right? And I'm like, oh, what's that? And I go into the profile, and the profile is of Becca Skinner, photographer, conservationist, Nat Geo explorer. I'm like, whoa. And I look through her work and portfolio, and a lot of it is fly fishing. A lot of it is women in the outdoors and in fly fishing and mountaineering and being outside. And I was raised in a matriarchal home. And so, I didn't know my dad till I was 13. So I was just so drawn to her work that I went to the website, and I just dove in, right? And at 2 a.m., get this, 2 a.m., I write her an email that basically just says, hey, I'm into building, hi, I'm Eduardo. I came across your work. Love it. I also love fly fishing. Maybe we get together and fish. I love building community, and I think your work's terrific, and you happen to live in Bozeman. So, and that was how we met. We went fly fishing.
That's incredible.
Right?
And then, and it's also cool. You have someone to take pictures of you too. My wife doesn't take pictures, so there's no evidence of anything in my life.
Well, let me just tell you, she does take amazing pictures, and I am fortunate that I am super, super fortunate in that sense. But I'll tell you more often than not, if we're on the river, I like to row, and this is a dream day for me. I'll row, and she'll be up on the bow, and cowgirl hat on, and our dog Vita will be on the cooler right between the two of us, putting my legs against it like my rowing brace, and we'll roll, and I'll take photos of her catching fish. And I'd love to.
What's in the cooler? My wife likes High Life when we're in the boat.
Oh man, I'm putting Modelo cans in the boat. Probably some fresh lime, and a little flask of tequila, probably, and then we're probably gonna put on top of that some elk jerky, some veggies, some fruit, and plenty of water.
I want to see a photo of all that spread. Damn. And also, and I want to give a shout out to my friend Ed Felker. He's a big fan of your wife's. And when she was in town at National Geographic, which is not far, I asked if we could get together and do a podcast, and she was a little shy about it. Said she didn't know if she could handle a whole fishing podcast. So maybe we could do if I ever meet up with both of you sometime out west, we'll get both of you on. Or if you're ever in DC.
Looks like Rob just invited you again. I'm just throwing that out there.
And then the photos of living out of, is it a van or a truck? Those were the ones that really made me want to move out west.
Wow. I love hearing that. Happy the truck. That was a yellow Chevy that she used to have.
With the one with her painting the trout on the inside.
Yeah, no, she had that thing. That was Becca was rocking that ride, Happy the truck, when we met. And the interior had this, it was built out with a bed and a pull out, right? So it had storage, and it was just rigged for adventure. And she had a beautiful rainbow trout she had painted on the side of one of her bed compartments.
That's awesome. My wife's gotten soft when it comes to the outdoors and sleeping outdoors. She won't sleep in the Xterra. She didn't want to sleep in a barn at a Healing Waters tournament last year either.
I no judgment, man. I love it out there for sure. But I mean, what do you do? It's like when you're a chef and someone they have not an allergy, let's say, but a dislike of an ingredient, or I don't like tomatoes. All you can do is just say, yeah, no problem, and try and learn about it and try and respect it, or propose, are you open to an interpretation of your past experience? If they say yes, then you have the opportunity to try and get tomatoes in front of them another time, or being outside. And I've learned that a lot. Becca and I are talking about kids, and I'm thinking, okay, so how do I bring my, how do I try and encourage my kids to love the outdoors like I do, and all of these other pursuits, while still letting them follow their own North Star, It's an interesting one to think about.
We're always trying to get our kid outside.
Oh yeah.
She went guiding with me to help because I had a client the same age as her last Sunday. So she was helping out a little bit. It was pretty cool.
Nice.
That was the sewage outflow, which you probably don't have any experience fishing those with all the water you have.
No.
Yeah, the water that comes out of the water treatment plant that feeds into the Potomac.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the prettiest spot, but you can fish it year round. And in the wintertime when everything's cold and shut down, that's the fishery. Locally. Really? Yeah, so she wanted to hang out.
Yeah.
And she's learning to row the drift boat too.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. I love it. I love it.
So do you ever have any fun with your injury? I'm thinking of, there's a guy who dresses up every year for Halloween. He's got one leg. Do you ever have like a fake hand and then people shake it and it comes off, kind of jokes with it? Like, do you have a good sense of humor about having an injury?
Yes, a very good sense of humor about having an injury. I love giving people a hand by literally handing them a hand. When we were in ICU, kudos to Jen and to all the caregivers out there, right? Like to any of you who have been there for someone just like selflessly, right? And so, but Jen and then also my sister, both, they were just huge proponents that we got to laugh our way through this. Like, we are just going to have to laugh our way through this shitty experience, When
you're at REI, do you lift up the gloves and say, are these half off?
No, I directly call the company and totally struck a deal. This was like 5 years ago with a company just to send me rights, because what do you do with all the lefts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a glove catch on fire lighting a stove camping a couple years ago. So I threw the other one on eBay. Just why not? Maybe someone's missing the same glove, or maybe somebody doesn't need the other glove. Sold a Mountain Hardwear glove for $3.
Good job.
Yeah. It could have been you if it was a right black Mountain Hardwear glove.
Oh, well, listen. So my friend Rick Montejano is an incredible fisherman and so fun to be with on the water. And as well as my buddy Chef Ranga Pereira. And when the three of us go out, and Rick, Rick has always been like very supportive of me. And when I lost my hand and had my injury, and the conundrum you and I were just discussing, which is, what are you going to do with all those left gloves? So I get a package in the mail from Rick Montejano, and it's like, with love from Rick, and it's all of these rights. And I guess for him, he wears through his lefts quicker than his rights for whatever reason. Maybe he's left-handed, I don't know. And so he sent me, I don't know, 3 different, and they were all like the fingerless mitts, like total fly fishing stuff, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's fun. You can have fun with it. You just have to own it.
And having a sense of humor is kind of the only way you can't. I mean, the spirit you have and the smile that's throughout that entire movie, and I don't know if it's because all the coffee you drink, but you never seem to be down.
Well,
or at least not show it for the camera, but being able to joke about it, sort of, yeah, like you said, owning it and not feeling sorry for yourself, or somebody might just sit around and just think that their life's ruined because they've got an injury. And you just took life by the balls.
Well, thanks. And I guess here's the thing, and is it's all about perspective for me. And so if I'm able to find goodness in my life's experience, then, you know, things as disruptive and painful and, you know, near fatal, like my injury, you know, there's always an opportunity to just find something good in it, you know, and to purpose that experience towards wherever you're going. And so I think that's kind of my outlook on it, you know.
The healing powers that fly fishing has, do you find different sports that you're involved in? Because I really only fly fish. I don't do pretty much anything else. Do others heal you mentally, physically, in other ways? And is there, you know, if you're feeling maybe sad one day, you're like, I got to go do one sport because that's the one that cheers me up, and maybe another one gives you hope, for example.
Yeah, I don't know. There may not be a direct, like a heavy correlation like that. There's, oh gosh, I think just when I'm able to unplug and really put myself into the pursuit of something I enjoy deeply, like fishing or like hiking or surfing or any of the above, they're almost at equal scale. However, with fishing, it's just going to have its own proprietary feeling and emotion that no other sense of joy, you know, like no other activity gives me. And maybe it's because, you know, I grew up fishing with my twin brother, Eugenio. Maybe it's because, you know, my dad is a third and I'm a fourth generation fisherman from Mexico. And you know, I've been floating down the Yellowstone River since I was 8 years old. And so my sense of fishing is so deeply rooted in who I am. But it's, yeah, does that make sense? It has its own place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have any adaptations on the prosthetic for fishing, like a line cutters to cut your line? Like, can you, is it modular? Like, I know there's a hammer sort of thing underneath it, but can you put anything on it?
Yeah.
For different sports?
Yeah, to a point. So the if you look at at least my prosthetic, the portion of the prosthetic that covers my forearm is made of carbon fiber, and it's called the socket. And then the piece that we would refer to as the hook or the hand is called the terminal device. And basically, there's catalogs of different terminal devices that I could put into my socket, right? And yet I've never had to venture past the hook and my functioning right hand to do what I need to do in fishing. So I've thought about it. My friend Oliver White and I were on a fishing trip on actually the show Hungry Life I mentioned that we produced with Yeti. It was Oliver White and Hillary Hutchinson and I were fishing the production crew to do that Yeti episode. And
that was the one down in New Orleans?
Down in Yucatan.
Yucatan. Okay. I'm gonna watch this tomorrow.
Yeah, you gotta watch it. The one we didn't go to New Orleans. We went to like the Port Aransas, Laguna Madre area of Texas. That was with JT Van Zandt for redfish. But
that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's what you're thinking of.
Not
but
Louisiana.
The one in Yucatan, I remember Oliver White coming up to me at night, having a beer and back at the lodge, and we were riffing on it. Oh man, you could get a hook and have some kind of a guide that the line can run through where it only pinches when you pull down. Because we're talking about how to open and close my hook quick enough to double haul and line management. But I'm figuring out with this hook, so I haven't had to reinvent any new tools just yet, other than how I think of things, like.
Have you found anything in life that's actually easier to do with the hook?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I can hold my phone all day long and my hand will never get tired, and I don't need a glove on it to keep it warm.
Pulling hot pans off the
grates? There's unlimited sort of. It's funny, we want to call them perks, right? But it's actually not a perk or a benefit. It's actually just what that hand can do. Think of it that way, right? It's just the limits or lack of limits of my left hand now. And so it's crazy to think about, right? Like on the one hand, which is my right hand, it can do all most fallible human things. And on my left hand, which is made of titanium and rubber, I can pull hot pans out of the fire, and I can chip ice away and use it as a hammer and a little bit of a mallet and in a vise, and the list goes on. But gosh, there's just no. My neighbors came over the other day, and they have a 6-week-old, and I was holding little Galahad, little baby boy, and easy enough to hold him with my right arm, but then I was trying to hold this pacifier with my hook, and I was like very conscious of putting bringing my hook in close to this little baby's face, and so there's these considerations with having metal for a hand, right?
Can you feel the phantom? The term where you can still feel your fingers?
Phantom limb syndrome is what it's, and I had it briefly when I was in ICU, kind of immediately after my amputation, but and then I didn't feel it for quite some time, but in just this last year, I've started to have more sensation in my amputation site, like right on my forearm.
The nerves waking up after years of.
And maybe it totally could be. I don't know what it is, and sometimes it's a little what I would call irritating, but thankfully it's manageable.
It's amazing how this has just not stopped you in doing more things that people with no injuries in their life would ever have the guts to do. And in the end of the movie, you're talking to a bunch of kids. How often are you getting out and telling your story in public?
Every day I walk away from my house. And, I mean it. It's like every time I step outside of the privacy of my home is an opportunity to have a youngster, or, you can, what is that, to his mom at a grocery store line. And I can choose to ignore and be like, oh, another person talking about my hook. Or I can turn around and smile and say, hi, you mean this? And 9 times out of 10, that kid's going to say, yeah, that, and I get a quick exchange. And now you've got this young individual coming out in the world and like, wow, okay, that was a hand called a prosthetic. And And so there's that opportunity just is incredible every day, you know. But you know, on a big scale, you know, the documentary Charge, the catalyst for me to say yes, because I had friends and family and you know, my agent at the time, you know, all write a book and make a documentary, and I was so scared of sharing who I was now, you know, then with the world, that I decided not to. And then it was 3 years went by, and I spent a day at the National Ability Center in Park City, Utah, and I was so impressed by these young individuals and their resiliency and their ability to just own their situation that I kind of started to find my why that day. And on my way to the airport to fly home, I swung through the burn trauma center and called ahead of time and said, "Hey, you know, do you think I could swing by? I haven't seen everyone in a few years." When I got there, it was just, you know, maybe a handful of nurses who had been on my floor, who had been, you know, been in the burn trauma while I was there. And I mean, there was not a dry eye in the room for sure. It was awesome to see them. And Dr. Morris, who is the doctor who was on call when I was wheeled in and effectively was part of the team that saved my life, he came right up to me and just really hugged and immediately like lifted my shirt up. He wanted to see how my scars had healed, and you know, after a couple minutes of being with everybody, he had to go, and he gave me another hug, and he directly said in my ear, he said, "It feels so good to see you again. You need to come out here more often." And, you know, what I took it as was, you know, like I had recovered from something that most would find or most would not have recovered from, is what he was saying. And whatever the reasons were, I needed to share that it was possible for that to happen. And I had not an obligation, but why would you not share that with others to help others? And boom, I was like, okay, that's why that's my why for Charged. That's the reason. And that was in Jen and Phil, my friend who's the director, the entire executive team, the production team. It became everyone's why for this film was, you know, this is why we're making Charged, is so that it can go out and help others. And so now, you know, your question was, how often am I, you know, speaking? And as often as I can, in every moment that I can.
As you've turned into a role model, are there people that you look up to? And when you were getting through the initial injury, that people that you looked at for influence to help you get through things?
Yeah, 100%. Too many to name. And I mean, I looked up to everybody. I mean, I literally, I remember being shit scared coming out of ICU. You know, I literally, and so much of me was kind of a freshly born babe in that sense. And I don't know where I would start, you know, from my close family to close friends. And, you know, I think, you know, there were folks from around the world sending thoughts and prayers and funds and assistance. And then, you know, for years, I feel like so many who have been a part of this journey are right here with me still, seeing, you know, looking at that bigger picture, and you know, and it's my pleasure to just do my best to give it back, or try, right, wherever I can.
Do people ever compare you to Aaron Ralston having a similar injury after an outdoors event?
No. Aaron's story, for those who haven't heard it, you know, he amputated his own hand to save his life. So I mean, more folks have mentioned Aaron and his name and story as it's similar to mine, and in like a supportive way. Like, gosh, both of you, you know, the stories are incredible and so inspiring, or so lifting, or raw and honest, and so it's been. And I remember watching that story, right? I remember watching that story while dealing with my own experience. So I've been a big fan for a long time.
Is there a fishing organization that has members with amputations where you go out with other anglers with similar?
Mm. The one here locally is gonna be Warriors Quiet Waters. I personally am not connected or actively connected with a fishing organization that specifically focuses on with folks that have disabilities. But in a broader sense, I guess the Challenge Athletes Foundation is an organization that I am very active with out of San Diego. They incredible nonprofit that basically awards not only grants to those in need for adaptive sport medicine. So in other words, the Challenge Athletes Foundation helped me receive a grant that I was able to get a rowing hand so that I could row my drift boat safely. And so it's through that organization that I really try to give back to the disability community. And however, if it weren't for lack of time right now, there would be nothing stopping me from being 100% active with folks who are trying to figure out how to get back on the water and figure it out.
And we're in early February right now. What's the rest of your year look like? Do you have any travel plans somewhere? Anything down the road, tours for speaking engagements?
Well, it's a great question. More front and center for 2020 is the work with MontanaMex. To be honest, we're having just a terrific time looking at our business and trying to branch our community out and really partner with other brands in the upcoming years. That Warriors in Quiet Waters is a great example, or the Challenge Athletes Foundation. They're our charity partner, and so really in 2020, our mission is just solidifying our community and kind of really figuring out how to optimize our business so that we can be the best part of our community, coast to coast in the United States, for sure, as a starting point. So that's exciting. It's exciting to see growth happen for goodness, right? And really believe that what we're doing and with MontanaMex, is a part of a greater good, not just bringing, what I think is a super tasty organic ketchup with no preservatives in it to your door, but also being a part of a greater good. And who knows, Rob, I may just fly fish Japan this year because committed to take a honeymoon as I got married last July, and Becca Skinner and I are looking at Japan. So I may just get that Tenkara out.
Watch out for bears on the North Islands.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Will do.
So some random questions. What's the best sandwich in your neck of the woods in Montana?
Oh, easy. Well, it's not easy, actually. It's going to be, yep, I know what it is. It's going to be a brisket sandwich at Follow Your Nose Barbecue in Emigrant, Montana, on the river. 2 minutes after you picked it up. Stone's throw from the river. Yep.
Now, with all the world travel, where's the best sandwich if you're going to be traveling around the world on a yacht? Besides the ones you would make in your kitchen, which must have been tough cooking in a boat kitchen.
Oh, I know exactly where I'd want to go for a sandwich if I was on a yacht. I would want to be in Ixtapa, Mexico, and I would want to be on an early morning surf adventure and going south of Zihuatanejo about an hour to a little market and getting a torta for breakfast on my way to a surfing break with a spearfishing gun and a fly rod in hand. That's what I'd be wanting to do.
It sounds like a commercial right now.
Nah.
For just great life. What's something you won't eat?
I'll let you know. I guess, haven't found it yet. Crow? Who knows?
Interesting. What's your favorite Montana wildflower?
Probably lupin. Probably lupin or shooting stars. You can eat those.
What do they taste like?
Flower, shooting stars, vegetal, sometimes slightly sweet. Usually find them when hiking. Maybe a wild onion blossom, maybe my favorite flower.
What do you call the ends of a loaf of bread? I've heard people use different. Is there a culinary term?
Oh, I mean, opportunity, French toast, crostini.
But no funny names for them?
Not that I know of.
Okay. I've been told they're can be called ears or heels.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay, so yeah, I mean, as Like make sure the heels are square. We want those heels to be, I could see that.
Okay. Do you have any irrational phobias?
Um,
Something that Becca would make fun of you for having?
Phobia. I don't think so.
Do you have a favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie? Preferably from the early to mid 80s?
I was raised without a TV, so Terminator is going to be probably the only one I could even name. I can't recall another early Arnold movie from, the 90s or late 80s or, yeah.
Well, that should feed into my next question, which is what's a book everyone should read?
What is a book that everyone should read? Everyone should read a book by Andrew Dornenberg and Karen Page, and it's called Culinary Artistry. And keep it on your kitchen counter and have it be, it's a solid way for the curious, omnivore to pair salty and sweet pairings, certain ingredients, and see what, it's just a complete encyclopedia of flavors and taste pairings plus seasonality. And is digestible. You don't have to be a chef. It's not telling you to cook anything, right? It's just saying that chocolate and orange go well together and things like that, right?
All right. For toilet paper, do you want it over or under the roll?
I gotta tell you, I pull from the right. My toilet paper roll holder is an elk head with an antler, and so it actually is a lateral pull versus a longitudinal pull.
Wait,
so
you got sharp antlers near your back. What if you fall backing into the toilet in the dark?
Gosh, man, I worked on a boat for 10 years.
Okay.
Walk around, no problem.
Do you have a favorite cheese?
Yes. I would say it would have to be currently Comté.
You grating that, shaving it, you doing little cubes?
Oh, no,
melting?
I'm like dessert binge eating it at 10 p.m. when I'm crushing some late emails and maybe, having a glass of wine, chilling out, and I just cut thick chunks of it and maybe a few.
Little truffle honey?
Oh, man, now you're talking.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, since you're the ketchup expert, ketchup or mustard on hot dogs?
Well, it depends. If you have MontanaMex ketchup, then nothing. If you don't have MontanaMex ketchup, you may need the mustard to really bring it up a notch.
All right. And then something we argue about in our house is, I grew up never refrigerating ketchup, and you never see it in refrigerators at the diner. My wife likes it refrigerated. What is your professional, and I will buy that as my next foray into the MontanaMex when I go to Whole Foods. There's no Whole Foods around here. That's the problem.
Give me an address, Rob. I'll just send you some.
Oh, heck yeah.
For everyone else, you can go to MontanaMex.com. We should have created a code for you. Maybe we can set that up.
We can do that. This will be the sponsored by MontanaMex episode.
Done. All right.
People have already heard the intro.
Yeah, we'll figure everyone out. So ketchup, it's here's the funny thing with food is live cultured foods that are alive, foods that are growing. They can live at ambient room temperature and they even get better, right? They get more complex, the flavors develop, the sugars develop, and it's even better for your gut. So across the board, it's cooler. Sauerkrauts, sourdough starters, kombuchas, things like that. But ketchup, I think if you're buying, just sort of a commodity ketchup, I want to refrigerate it. If it's stuff that doesn't need to be refrigerated for me is like, and if it's not alive, then I'm questioning, So with my MontanaMex ketchup, I open it and I put it in the fridge when I'm done.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
My last question for you is, what is your most played album?
My most played album. Dang. In my 20s or now?
I'm saying anytime. 20s was probably punk.
Not for me. Oh gosh, man, this is a good question.
I would have taken you for like skateboarding, surfing, LA punk music.
No, I was all in my 20s. I was all Jack Johnson, Ben Harper, and then in my teens, it was all classic rock. And now it's a lot of country plus those other genres. But I listen to a lot of classical and a lot of musicals, music that kind of chills my brain out. So I don't know if I could pick an album though. Dang. feel like I'm letting you down. Your last question. You may need to give me another one.
If you could go back in time to fish with a famous person that's no longer alive, that was known for fishing, who would you choose?
I'd go fish with my dad. Yeah, Dad passed away November 25th, like 2.25 years ago, and it was our favorite thing to do with each other.
That's pretty cool.
I'd go fish with him.
That's special.
Better than album. That was good.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your life after a trauma, and you're just doing more than most people would do. And I want to say mundane lives around here, you get more done on a daily basis probably than most people. And it's pretty cool. I'm glad. I wish I'd found you earlier and could have been following your story longer, but I'm glad I came across you about 2 months ago.
Likewise, Rob, I appreciate it. And, listen, I'm super grateful to be included on here, and for anyone who took time to listen. What do we have if we don't have each other? If we can't become a mirror for each other, we really don't know who we are. So to everyone out there and anyone that goes and, check out what we're up to with MontanaMex, and check out what we're up to with Charged. And if we can ever do anything for you listening, you have a buddy who's suffering from something because he has a disability, hit me up. If you got a food question, hit me up. Get a hold of MontanaMex and let us know. And it just makes this whole thing so much sweeter. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate it. And everyone's listening.
You coming out to DC anytime soon?
I should. That's I wasn't raised on much. And my mom, she made a point to make sure that we got to travel. And when we were kids, we went to DC. And since I've been quite a few times, and it's such a beautiful place. And in regards to just it's so rich. There's so much to do in the city, and there's so much to experience, and it has such a legacy. It's got its own vibe, and it's powerful.
It's pretty cool. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you for joining us for the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast. For more information or to contact Rob, please go to www.robsnowhite.com. This podcast is brought to you by Freestone Productions at freestoneproductions.com.